Open your mind.
Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 2nd of August 2015. And we'd just like to apologise. We have a system problem with our OYM stream. Unfortunately, nothing got to do with our end. It's got to do with the actual stream company. They have a system error on their system. And we can't get the stream up and running.
Must be Irish water streams, isn't it?
Must be Irish water. And so we are running on United We Strike, and we are running on People's Internet Radio. So you can pick us up on them streams. I'm sure you can hear us now at the moment anyway. So that's the good news. And just funny that last week we also had a system error. We reckon that file had a little bit of corruption in it, which crashed the software, our SAM software. But the podcast worked out, all came out in the editing, so it was all fine in the end. But we have a busy night tonight. We have two sets of guests on tonight. Our first guest is James O'Sullivan. James has been on the show before, and he got arrested unlawfully by the police because he didn't give his name to the police because he didn't commit a crime, and that's what the law says. So we're going to be talking to James. We're going to get an update from James to find out exactly, what happened and where he's at now at the moment with the court case. And on part two, we're going to have Aingeal Rose and Ahonu, who we met on the Pain Genie course along with James. And they're going to be telling us all about the Akashic records and what they are and all that kind of stuff. So we have a packed night, and as usual, we have a few things to talk about as well. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, the communication channels this evening.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, 046 927 1212 is the number for the studio this evening if you have any questions for our guests. Alternatively, if you want to ask some questions but you don't want to go live, you can log into one of the chat rooms. We're going to be on oymradio.com. You will see the link there for the chat room. You can log in there and post your questions. Alternatively, if you're on People's Internet Radio, that's peoplesinternetradio.com. You can log into the chat room there and ask questions. We will be monitoring both of the chat rooms. We also have Facebook anti-social media. I'll have to stop saying anti-social media. But we have anti-social media, i.e. Facebook, on the website as well. Again, oymradio.com. You can see the link there on the left-hand side for Facebook. You can check that out, see what we're up to. And we also have the YouTube link there as well. And if you want to listen to us on your iPhone or your Apple device or your tablet, you can log on to OYM Radio, TuneIn Radio. We have the link there at the bottom of the screen. It's tuneinradio.com, and you can get the link for your Android and your iPhone devices, so you can hear us there as well. Alan.
Excellent stuff. All right, just a few things to touch base with. Now, during the week, we found out some information. NBC News, apparently, have said that the Vatican reveals a selection of historic documents from its secret archive. Now, my kind of opinion on this, and it's just my opinion on it, is that if it goes against the dogma, well, that's a positive thing. But if it's actually got to do with creating more slavery in their system, I think we can just forget about it. I mean, number one, NBC News, mainstream media, and of course the Vatican as well. So I'd be interested to see what these historic documents are and what they contain, and if they actually reveal any information that might be of interest and that goes against the current dogma. I doubt it, but I'll be keeping an eye on that and see what happens anyway. Steve.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, seemingly, Alan
just can't get the staff.
You can't get good staff. I don't know what that. If I was my employer, I'd sack me. Anyway, yes. Then again, I wouldn't work under these conditions. So I'm taking a stand. There you go. Anyway, a massive fireball soared through the sky over Argentina, triggering a wave of social media posts or anti-social media posts. The mesmerising show, which lasted just a few seconds, coloured the sky green, allegedly. Alan was just telling me about this before we went live, actually. I don't actually I haven't seen the links on Facebook, so I'm not too sure exactly what happened. But from what Alan was saying, that it is reckoned that it's something to do with the planet X or Nibiru. That's supposed to be up there in the sky, something to do with the tail of that, and we're going to see more of this seemingly in the future. But all you can do is just keep watching the skies, I suppose, and watching Facebook.
Exactly. And now there was another meteorite over Iran as well, which happened. Now, if you go off to YouTube and go on to Dabu 7, which is DABH007, he has an actual post up there with the actual footage of the meteorite. Yeah, he has a few things up there, but if you should have a look at it and see what you think. But there are people out there saying that it's the tail end, it's the debris from Planet X, because the tail is pointing at the planet Earth at the moment. Now, again, there's the argument of, is it a planet, is it a superwave, or does it actually exist? Who knows? The one thing we do know is that if there is something coming in, they're not going to tell us. Right, they're just not going to tell us. So we'll just see. We're going to have guests on anyway in the next few weeks. Dr. Joseph Cipollone is on next week, and we have Dr. Simon Atkins coming on in a few weeks' time, and we're going to be talking all about it. So we'll be doing that in a few weeks' time. Now, the other thing that we want to just chat about is, a few weeks ago we had David Wilcock and Corey Good on. Now, they talked about the Blue Avians and the Severe Alliance and all that kind of stuff. And there is another train of thought out there that some people have come to the conclusion that the Blue Avians and the Severe Alliance deception is quite possibly a working artificial intelligence operation, AI, that is being supported by super advanced technology and may involve people high up in intelligence circles. Now, this technology has been used before, and they're saying hundreds of inmates of the Gunnison facility of the Utah State Prison and the state hospital were subjected to this brand of mind control used as test subjects like rats in a lab. In the early 1970s, this was revealed in the Utah U.S. District Court. Now, we know they have technology to do this, and project voices in your head and thinking that it's God speaking to you. So, and obviously Jade Helm is supposed to be an AI technology as well. So, is there such a thing as Blue Avians? Is there such a thing as a Sphere Lines? I haven't seen them myself, so technically I can't really say there is. We can only go by what we hear. You just have to go ahead and do your own research and check it out yourself and decide for yourself. Look at both sides of the fence and see what's going on. But maybe it is AI, maybe it's not. I don't know. But we just thought we'd read that out anyway, and to let you know, to give you both sides of the fence and what's going on there. Steve?
Yeah, for anyone who remembers the last time we had Mark Impey on, it was a very good show, great information. Mark was also doing some platform work up in Oldcastle as well. Well, for your listening pleasure, International Media Mark Impey will be in Oldcastle again. That's going to be in the Spiritualist Centre on the 30th of August. That is this month. It's going to be a night of mediumship with Mark. It's going to be taking place. Mark will also be on OYM on the same night via a pre-record. So we're going to actually have Mark up in the studio. We're going to shoot the breeze with him, so to speak, and we're going to get it down on tape. And the night he's going to be doing the work there up in Oldcastle, we will have that interview for you. It's just unfortunate that, the way it works out, that we can't actually do a live interview with Mark. Maybe at some point in the future that may be a possibility. But again, it's a night not to be missed. The last time he was over here, Alan was telling me that it was a fantastic evening, great information, a lovely crowd up there, and everyone kind of went away with a smile on their face. So it was a good evening. So again, mark that date in your calendar if you're interested. It's going to be again the 30th of August, and it's going to be the Spiritualist Centre in Oldcastle, County Meath.
Yeah, he is going to be doing a workshop as well on the Saturday, which is the 29th. And people are snapping up the seats at the moment, so if you need to contact the Oldcastle Spiritual Centre, jump on Facebook. They have a Facebook page there, and you'll be able to contact them if you're interested in doing or getting involved in the workshop. How's your week, Steve?
Yeah, my week's been quite an interesting week. One of the ladies in my place of employment came up to me the other day and said, "Oh, you must be delighted, eh?" And I went, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "Oh, the news." And I went, "Yeah, I don't really listen to the news, and I prefer to be alone with my own thoughts rather than be listening to the likes of RTE and all this carry on." So she was telling me about the Irish water fiasco thing, the stress test or whatever they called it. We failed it anyway. Seemingly that there was figures being put out bandied about by Irish Water, saying how many people had actually registered, and it was making them look absolutely fantastic. But when the result of this test came to light, seemingly, I believe it was somewhere in the region of 27% of people actually registered. So therefore, more lies from Irish Water. And, but that didn't deter them. They're still at it. They're still kind of plucking away. And even there was a guy on RTE being interviewed on I think it's a program called Prime Time. It may be called Prime Time, I don't know. But he was being interviewed, and he's on record as saying, that despite what's happened, we still have to push forward. Irish Water, as far as he's concerned, it's here to stay. And we just have to keep plucking away, and, these people can't keep expecting to be getting the water for free, even though we've already been, it's been proven beyond a doubt that we're already paying for it twice, and, paying for it without, through the Irish Water, we'll just be paying for it 3 times, and, we've woken up anyway, so we're not going to go down that road. But they still believe it. And it's going to be very, very interesting. Alan and myself there, we were just discussing this during the week, that it's going to be interesting now when they start coming around knocking on doors, before the old election. That's if they have the cojones to actually knock on the door. We've heard already that some of the politicians are putting flyers in people's letterboxes in the wee small hours of the morning, or 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, I think is what we heard, because they obviously don't want to knock on doors, especially if they're already in government, in power, because they don't want to be on the doorstep with an angry voter, or potential voter. So it's going to be very interesting to see what their manifesto is, or the manifest, when they're coming around knocking on doors, because obviously everyone is going to ask them, okay, if we re-elect you, what are you going to do about Irish Water? And of course they're going to cross their fingers behind their back and go, oh, if you elect me again, we'll abolish Irish Water. But don't believe the hype, as the song says. Just don't believe it. Again, I'm not telling anyone who to vote for, but keep it in the back of your mind, independents or other parties. And when I say other parties, I don't mean the likes of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour, and that new one, I don't
Renewal.
Renewal. Yeah, with your woman Lucinda Creighton. Yeah. I wouldn't vote. I wouldn't ask her for a hand if I was drowning, because I don't think she'd give you one anyway. But there you go. Yeah, not too much else really going on in my week. That was the highlight when I heard that Irish Water failed the test. That kind of brought a smile to a weary face. But yeah, there you go. How was your week?
Yeah, just a couple of things. In Donegal, actually, apparently they're going around knocking on doors, asking people to sign up to Irish Water. Yeah. So be on your guard. You might get a knock on your door. I know what will happen if they knock on my door anyway, so that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll walk out with the bucket and you'll throw. You
want a donation?
It'll be an empty bucket, but you go, there you go. I wouldn't fill it up with water to give you the satisfaction.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't waste it. We wouldn't waste it on them anyway. Now, just a couple of things. One is, again, you're still using the Pain Genie, which is great on a few people, which is fantastic. But one of the things we said, and Bob Beck has also said regarding his blood electrifier, is that don't assume people want to be healed. That's all I'll say. There was a person that I seen during the week, and I offered him some treatment on the Pain Genie, and he didn't seem too bothered. He seemed to be quite happy with his pain. And I thought, well, okay, we'll leave it there then. And we won't do any further treatment on that.
That's unusual though, isn't it?
Look.
So someone's in pain, you're offering them help, and they're going, no, you're grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy enough with this pain.
I'm used to it now. I'm used to it. I live with it. I'm used to it,
Yeah. That reminds me of a lot of people. I actually know several people who are like that, If they didn't have an ailment, they'd have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Because every time you have a communication with these people, it's, oh, me back.
The worst thing you can do is say to them, how are you doing?
How are you?
That's it. Half an hour later, they're still telling you.
Yeah, they're still telling you.
You just feel the energy being sucked from you. Yeah. So don't assume for anybody who's into healing, whether it's a Pain Genie or whether you're an alternative healer or whatever, that people want to be healed. Even though they might be all enthusiastic to get it done. In my case, they weren't enthusiastic, and they just kind of said, sure, I live with the pain. I went, okay, that's fair enough. We'll leave it there then. Okay, there's a website called zerohedge.com. Dr. Simon Atkins does rave about it. And I just wanted to print out something read out something here, I should say. I printed out something on the site. And again it says, things are unfolding in textbook fashion for another major global financial crisis in the months ahead. And yet most people refuse to see what is happening. In their blind optimism, they want to believe that things will somehow be different this time. Well, the coming months will definitely reveal who was right and who was wrong. On the website, they have 11 red flag events that just happened as we entered the pivotal month of August 2015. As I say, Dr. Simon Atkins is going to be in the show, does recommend this site. It's called zerohedge.com. Now, I know some people might say, oh, it's fear porn, da-di-da-di-da. But to be honest with you, it's better to know about this, and if it doesn't happen, then that's fine. You know, and because it is important to keep an eye on what's going on. Because, you know, there are people out there who might want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Well, unfortunately, we don't do that. We report on information, and we put it out there, and it's not fear porn, it's just information. And check it out yourself and find out. And as we always say, it's better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. It's very, very important. So, zerohedge.com is the website if you want to check it out. Right, now we're going to bring our guest in. James O'Sullivan. James has been on our show before. He came on for about 20 minutes to give us an update because he was unlawfully arrested by the police. And basically, he was outside talking to his friends after a night in the pub, and they were just having a basic chat, and the police pulled up, and without any niceties, they just said, what's your name? And of course, James didn't commit any crime, and the law states that if you don't commit a crime, you don't have to give your name. And everything went downhill from there. They arrested James, brought him to the police station. He was in there for a couple of hours, and then, although they offered to drive him home, they let him make his own way home in the middle of the night, and he was a good few miles from his house. That's my recollection of the interview we did with James. But we'll just get that clarified with James. We'll bring him in now, and then what we'll do is we'll just get an update from James to find out exactly what's gone on since then. So good evening, James. How are you?
I'm not too bad, Alan. Thanks for having me on the show again.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. James, we met on the Pain Genie seminar on the training, which is great. And then we had a chat about what happened to you after that night, after, you know, your court cases and stuff. And I thought, we're going to have to get you back on and let people know what happened because, you know, you went through an awful lot, and you're still going through an awful lot with it. A lot of positives by the sound of things. But before we get into what's happening now, just give us 5 minutes of exactly what happened that night, and then tell us from there what happened, what's been going on.
Okay, I have a number of different. I've had a number of different incidences with Gardai over the years, and but some of them have been of my own making because I wanted to test the system and see what would happen, basically. But this particular incident that I discussed with you before the show, it wasn't anything about anything I had to do or didn't do. I just happened to be standing outside a hotel in Ockram in County Wicklow. It's very, very remote village, beautiful village in Wicklow. And I was just standing there with two lads in though. I'd only been in Wicklow for like 2 nights. I'd moved there. And two Gardai rolled up in a squad car, a traffic corps, and just drove past us very slowly. And I knew straight away something was going to go down the way they were kind of stalking us. And then they pulled up and went around us and pulled up beside us and said, what's the names? And Paul, who was with me, said, are we obliged to give you the names? And they said, yes, you are, under section such and such of the Road Traffic Act, Public Order Act, blah, 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 blah. And just a bit of banter back and forth, and then they got out of the car and started to get very intimidating. They even pushed Paul because he would refuse to give the name. We didn't we never refused at any stage. All we said was, are we obliged to give you names? We just asked questions. And that didn't go down very well with them. It seemed to me that there was kind of sort of a good cop, bad cop thing going on, or a training day going on, where there was a young guard and an older guard, and the older guard seemed to be kind of throwing his weight about.
Okay, yeah.
So that seemed to be what was going on. So I said, am I obliged to give the name? And Paul said as well, and said, no problem, giving you my name. Show me the law. It says I have to give it to you. And they said under Section 24 of the Public Order Act, and I said, what crime did I commit? And said, there doesn't have to be a crime. I said, well, surely it has to be a crime. I said, why else would I have to give you my name? He said, you just do. You have to. No, I don't. I said, there's no statute says that. There's no law that says that. Well, if you don't give us the names, we're going to arrest you. I said, you for real, like? I said, you can't just randomly arrest people for no reason, like. I said, what does Section 24 say? What does Subsection 3 say? And they started to panic then when they realised I knew what section they were actually talking about, because I had amazingly had been studying that the previous week. So I knew exactly what it said. It said Subsection 3 of Section 24 of the Public Order Act clearly points out that there has to be a crime under investigation for a name to be requested. And a reasonable cause is the legalese language that was used. There has to be a reasonable cause. And if you look up what reasonable cause is, it goes to probable cause under Black's Law Dictionary. And probable cause is then that there has to be an intent of a crime, or a crime under investigation, or you have to basically come upon somebody who's engaging in a crime to ask them for their name, to identify them. And they said, well, there might be some crimes taking place in Auckland at this moment in time, so that's why we're asking for the name. So that's you can't win, really, because they're just going to try and yell crap at you, just to be able to concrete what they're saying and their justification for asking you for the name. So once they engage with you, pretty much you don't have any way out. There's no way out. The only way out is either to try and walk away, which they'll jump on you anyway, or give your name. So they're going to force you to give the name. So they're going to use force in some way to give you the name. So then they arrested us, brought us 8 miles away to Arklow Gardai station. And I basically said to them in the back of the car, I said, lads, what in God's name are you doing? I said, do you have any idea how much trouble you're going to get into for what you've just done? You haven't just picked up 2 random guys who don't know the law. We actually know the law and know our rights very, very well. And there is going to be repercussions for what you're doing here. And I said, I can't wait to speak to your sergeant. And they said, well, you're going to meet him because he's waiting for you. I said, really? I can't wait to talk to him. So we were in handcuffs. We got out of the car, and they brought us around to the back of the Gardai station. And we went straight into the Gardai station. And I walked straight up to the Gardai, the sergeants, and I said to him, are you the guard in charge? Are you the sergeant in charge? He said, who's asking? I said, James is asking. I said, it's a standard Gardai procedure to arrest men off the street who have broken no laws. And he kind of looked at me funny and he said, well, what'd you do? I said, I didn't do anything. Why don't you ask your men what we did? And the younger guard said, well, they refused to give their names. I said, I didn't refuse to do anything. All I said was, am I obliged to give you my name? And that ended up in us being arrested because I asked questions. I said, now, either a man has rights or he has no rights. Now, if he has no rights, that means he's a slave. So what am I? Am I a man or am I a slave? What am I? So who am I? What am I? And he didn't say anything to that, and I ended up having a conversation with the 2 Gardai and the sergeant in the comms room for about 25 minutes back and forth, and then I started talking about the Constitution and Article 40 of the Constitution, fundamental rights of the citizen. I said, do you have any training in the Constitution? I said, you know what Article 40 is? He said, what's that? That was a sergeant that said, what's that? So they clearly have no training whatsoever in the Irish Constitution. So the Irish Constitution, as far as they're concerned, is a piece of paper that they heard about in Gardai College, but they never studied.
Yeah.
All they study is statutes.
Well, they go for 6 months training and they come out thinking they're Judge Judy,
Yeah. So it's like, I don't have any particular problem with majority of Gardai. I actually have a number of friends who are Gardai and who I've sat down with, who've had one of my friends cry after, finding people dead in a container, do you know what I mean? So, they have a very difficult job, a lot of them, it's not an easy job, and they get an awful lot of grief from people as well, a lot of disrespect, but I've never been disrespectful to Gardai at any stage in my life. I've always been very courteous and helpful and respectful in any time I've ever been asked to engage with the Gardai. But one thing I won't tolerate and can't tolerate is ignorance and, this abuse of power.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and I've also heard this from a current member of An Garda Síochána, that they let in a number of people into the Gardai during the boom times who weren't properly vetted. And they got in, and the psychopathic type or sociopathic type that would be attracted to the An Garda Síochána, a lot of those types ended up in the system. And once they're in and trained up and sworn in as Gardai, it's very hard to get them out. It's virtually impossible to get them out. So this is what we're seeing now. What we're seeing now is a combination of what the New World Order is doing, which is actually creating and profiling certain individuals for Garda Síochána roles, and these are type of people, men and women, that will follow orders blindly and do whatever is requested of them without critical thought.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very dangerous thing. And you have an Ottoman situation going on, where you have people who are blindly trained to do whatever it is, regardless of the repercussions, and not questioning the actual legalities or the lawfulness of what they're doing.
Well, again, one of the things I said before about the Nuremberg, the rules of Nuremberg law, and why the Nazis were put on trial, is because if a senior sergeant of the police, the Gardai, tells a junior guard to do something that's against the law of the land, that Gardai, regardless whether the senior guard told him to do it, it will be held accountable because it goes against the laws of the land. And that's what Nuremberg was all about.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, Alan. But my experience, that was only one experience with the Gardai in recent years. That was in 2012, right? Now, just to finish off where that is, I did say to them there was going to be repercussions for what they did. And there will be repercussions, because now I have a High Court case which is well underway, which I've got a solicitor barrister team in Dublin that's now engaged with the Chief State Solicitor's Office and on Garda Síochána and the Attorney General, and they've accepted the paperwork on behalf of myself, okay?
Yeah.
And that we are going to be taking the Gardai to the High Court, and we're going to look for a jury trial on this. This is going to be public knowledge very, very soon. In the next 6 months to a year, this is going to be a trial. It's going to go all the way to jury trial, and they're probably going to want to shut me down by making me an offer, on the steps of the court. I'm not going to accept it. This is going to go to a jury trial, because the public needs to know that they don't have to blindly give their details to someone who randomly comes up on the street. They just don't have to do it. There's no law that ever says you have to do it. And if you have to do that, then it's either two things: either that we've become racist slaves again, or under martial law, where all people's rights are completely pushed aside while we're in state of emergency.
Well, under European law, it says that slavery and servitude is illegal. So I think it's Article 4. So basically, and your question is completely valid. Are you a slave or are you a free man? I'm not talking about free man, but are you a free man? Because the whole idea is that you it's up to you to decide whether you want to consent, because the maximum law says consent creates the law. So if they're forcing you to do something and you're saying I'm not consenting, and they're still going to force you, well then you must be a slave, because if they should accept your no consent.
See, what I've learned on this journey so far is that's only one of 3 different cases that I have been involved with the Gardai. Now, the other 2, because I had no tax on my car. Okay, so the next one then was the 11th of November 13, where I was driving down the prom with my partner at the time, and I noticed that the guard was actually following me in a little van. Right?
Yeah.
And he had noticed I had no tax on my car. He hadn't given a ticket on the car where he noticed when I was parked up. He waited till I got back into it, drove down the road towards the roundabout, followed me around the roundabout, and followed me home. And followed me nearly all the way home, and then he decided he wanted to try and pull me over, and I didn't pull the car over because I knew that he was actually following me with unlawful intent. Okay?
Yeah.
So I didn't pull over. So when I waited till I got home, and then I got out of the car and I said, I don't recognise you. And he said, what do you mean you don't recognise? I don't recognise you. Do not trespass on this property. And I went into my parents' house and locked the door. So he didn't know what happened, and he just standing there and going, what the hell just happened? And then he called for backup for some bizarre reason. And this is all for no tax. So he called for backup, then another car came along, and they decided to call for a guy to lift my car off the footpath right in front of my parents' house, basically stealing the car. And I noticed them doing this through the window. I opened the window and I called them over and recorded them. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, James, under section 24 of the Road Traffic Act, or whatever section it was, Road Traffic Act, section 10 or 12, we are taking your property. I'm sorry, you can't take that. Who said you could take that? Well, have you got my consent to take it? And he said, no. So we don't need your consent. No, you do. You need my consent to take that, otherwise it's stealing. You don't have my consent to take it. And he just turned around, walked away, and took it anyway. So that case went all the way to the High Court, went to District Court, went to the High Court. I engaged with the local superintendent 8 times. I wrote him 8 times in 6 months, and all he ever said was, I acknowledge your correspondence, I acknowledge your letters. He never answered any of my questions in law. He never answered any of my questions in relation to the Constitution. He never answered any of my questions in relation to Angara Síochána, the professional values and ethical standards, where it clearly states that they are duty bound to protect people's rights and their property. But yet here they are stealing your property. And there's a number of laws there that say that your property cannot be taken from you
Exactly.
without your consent. There's a number of laws.
And one of them is if what they take is, if the debt is less than the item they're taken, then they can't do that. And I think there's a Treaty of Rome, something in there, the Lisbon Treaty, there's something in there that says that they can't take something that's higher to the value that the debt outstanding.
I brought that up in the High Court in front of Judge Peart in Court 9. That's called the principle of proportionality, and he completely poo-pooed it. Now, this is where I want to point out the corruption, right? And I saw corruption, not only did I see it at a local level, right? I saw the corruption going on between the local Gardai and the guy that runs the local the yard for where they keep the cars, right?
Yeah.
Or the possession of your they call them the vehicles, right? That's how they get the jurisdiction under the vehicles, under the acts.
Yeah.
I saw the corruption then with the DPP in the district court, and a fair play to the judge. The judge at the time was excellent in the district court, and when I turned around to the judge in the district court and I said to him, I said, I reserve all rights. I said, and I am the sole authorised administrator of that name. Because he tried to pin the name on me. He said, are you James O'Sullivan? And I said, I am me. I said, I'm the natural person, James O'Sullivan. And I said, I'm the sole authorised administrator of that name. And as soon as I said that, he turned around to the DPP and he said, where is this man's property? Because they still had it, and they had it for 6 months, and they were trying to destroy it under the Police Property Act of 1896 or something like that. And I went in there and I blocked them, and they panicked and they withdrew the application. So I actually won in court. I won out a small win. I won in court at that time. They didn't know what to do. They still had my property. They panicked. They withdrew the application straight away. They did not want to engage with me because I had so much paperwork there that I would have kept them there for like 2 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then they wrote to me then within 2 days to say they were going to destroy the car anyway. Right? That'll give you an idea of the level of corruption.
Oh yeah, well look, I've said before on the show, it's a cesspit of corruption. It is, and there's backhanders, brown envelopes, and we even heard apparently and allegedly that the company who take the actual cars, when people, when the guard says, oh, you don't have tax, and they take the car, well, there's a bit of a nice easy number going on there as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. So they said they're going to destroy it anyway because they knew that I wasn't going to leave it at that, right? And I was going to put an application in under the Police Property Act. A local journalist told me to that's what I should do, and I was going to do that, but they never gave me an opportunity to do that. So I went straight to the High Court, and I sought a judicial review on the superintendent of the local guard station at the time. Right? It was Finbar Murphy at the time. I brought him up to the High Court, and I brought the 2 Gardaí that were involved up to the High Court as well. I was up in the High Court 6 times, okay? Okay. And the very first day I walked in ex parte, and what that means is you're basically walking off the street with your application, and you're bringing it in front of the judge for the first time that day. It's not going through the Master's Court or anything like that. So I went in ex parte, and I said my property was taken without lawful consideration, without consent, or lawful authority. I said, as a man, I said my property was dispossessed. I said I want it returned. And I stood in my sovereignty, I stood in my power, within my rights, and the judge thanked me about 5 times before I left the court, and all of the barristers that were there didn't know what the hell I just said. They hadn't a clue. Because all they know is legalese. They don't know anything about men's rights at all. Right? Yeah. And the second day I went up, the judge was completely different. I heard 2 registrars say at the side of the court, is James O'Sullivan here yet? And as soon as I heard them talking about me like that, I said, the game is up, I'm not going to get any sauce here whatsoever. The judge came in, he sat down, he wouldn't look at me for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then he eventually put his head up, and the way he looked at me, out of the side of his eye, I knew this guy, someone has had a word in the ear of this man. And he's completely different. And he said, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to deny you your application. What I'm going to do is allow you to notify the other side, which is the opposite of what ex parte is. You're not supposed to notify the other side. So he gave me nothing, and all he's trying to do is put me off. I was up there another 4 times after that, and he not only did he deny me my application for judicial review of the superintendent, he actually made an order for the destruction of my car when it was the Gardai themselves who should have brought their own court application for the destruction. That wasn't why I was there. That'll give you an idea of the level of corruption. Not only that, but they moved the sixth time I was up there, they moved the court from court 9 up to court 16 upstairs. Right? They had no sovereign seal over the head of the judge. That just had classroom tables in there. It was an administrative room for employees of the state, which I said I was clearly not. And when I tried to speak when I walked in, a barrister spoke. When my name was called, a barrister spoke. The judge said, "1 moment." This barrister kept talking, and I interjected. And as soon as I interjected, then the clerk said, "James O'Sullivan, contempt of court." Right? So they did everything in their power to try and stop me. And as soon as that was said, I kind of just went, what the hell is going on here? I knew something really, really dodgy was going on. And then the judge said, "Come here, you." And he pointed his finger and he waved his finger at me to come over and sit down. He said, "Now I'm going to speak and you can say what you want after that." And then he spoke for whatever 5 minutes, quite aggressively. And I sat there calmly, and I was no more than 4 feet away from him. And he said, "Now, James, you can say what you like." I said, "I didn't consent. There was no lawful authority and no lawful consideration." He looked at me. He knew I was right. I pulled it back into common law jurisdiction again. He put his head down and he said, "Well, I'm still not going to allow the stay on the order." And what I was looking for, the 6th visit up there to the High Court, was a stay on the order he made the previous time, where he said he was going to destroy the property. So I was looking for a stay because I had ran all over Dublin City, and I put in my paperwork. I had very little time to get my paperwork in for an appeal to the Supreme Court. And if I had gotten into the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is closest to the Constitution, they would have had to look at Article 40 and the other articles in the Constitution in relation to property. Right? So that would have been a big, big, big problem for them, because they steal, right, 26,000 plus vehicles every year in this state from people. 26,000.
I know we've read out a few cases of one was an 8-month pregnant woman who was they took the car off her. I mean, they just don't give a damn. And of course they don't. I mean, it's gas to say we have a law. It's just pure ignorance and corruption, and it's just a cesspit. And this is why the whole system has to come down. It has to come down.
Yeah. Well, you see, they're going to keep this system going as long as they possibly can, right? And I don't see it collapsing anytime soon. It's a slow burn, right? And my attitude is that it's the same when Rome fell, right? The corruption was so bad, it was just endemic everywhere, and it actually imploded on itself. And I see this part of natural order. When a civilization becomes, like a cesspit, it just implodes. It's like a mutated cell becomes cancerous, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing now. And it's not just on a localized level or in one civilization. This is a global civilization. It's a global legal system. It's not just local.
Yeah.
This system is global, right? And the only way we're going to get around this is that we actually have to build a new society. We have to start now to start doing it. I think it's already started. It's already started online.
It's happening, James. I can tell you that now. It is happening. People are beginning to wake up. But tell us about the information you have found out with this journey that you went through the courts. You did tell us about the likes of speeding fines, and you found out stuff about that.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, right, see, I actually ended up in prison as well, right, because there's 2 different non-payment of tax cases, right? The first one was they took the car off me, and the second one, I was on the way up to Wicklow, and I had no tax on my car. I was pulled over on the side of the road near Gorey, and I failed to produce documents at the local station, and then I failed to turn up in court because I got the court date wrong. I had every intention of going into that court. I just put the wrong date in my phone, and I've actually put it in for a month later. And because I didn't turn up in court, even though I'd written to the Gardai, I hadn't ignored it completely. I'd written to the Gardai and I said, "You prove that I'm guilty of all these things that you say. You prove the man is guilty of all these different things that you say I'm guilty of." Right? He had 9 charges for me because I didn't produce documents. 9, right? And some of them were duplicated as well, so I knew there was something dodgy going on, right? So I didn't get a chance to go into court. I found the name guilty, right? they only ever find the named guilty if it's a victimless crime. And they have jurisdiction over you because of your birth certificate. And your parents are the ones who handed you over to the state. You became a ward of the state when the birth certificate was created. But the birth certificate is not yours. This is the thing. It's actually a creation of the state. And then the registrar of the state, then in Roscommon, they're the ones who create the birth certificate from the live register of birth. Okay? This is all state documentation. But the key behind all this is to learn that you are the one who actually controls that. You control that because that's your share in the common trust. So it's if you see, look at the corporation of Ireland as being a trust. It is set up as a trust. In Britain, it's the same. It's set up as a trust. So you're the one who actually has the share of that trust. Okay? So you look at your social welfare. Social welfare, they say you get a social welfare benefit. Who gets benefit? The beneficiaries of a trust get a benefit. Right? So there's your proof right there. It's right slap bang in your face. It's there. You can actually go online, right? And you can check. You can put in your birth certificate QSIP number, right? You can put in your driver's number on a particular website, in an American website, and your bond number comes up. I've got a matured bond online, okay, that you can buy. And it's a 30-year bond. It's already mature because I'm 39 now.
Yeah.
And anybody can do this.
Well, we have said that, you know, when Ireland, when the Irish government goes to Europe and they're selling bonds, it's bondage. They're selling our future earnings. I mean, we are kind of slaves, you know. And you have these, you have these calculations made out, and you know exactly about your lifespan, and you know they have it all calculated and know the exact value. So it's all about money. That's what it is at the end of the day. They're selling us into the bond market in Europe.
Exactly. They're sending our future blood energy into the futures markets. That's what it all is. It's all bonds. Exactly. It's bondage. It's bondage of the human vessel for the blood, the sweat and tears, energy that we go out and physically work for actual cash that we get, where banks create it out of thin air, and they actually take that. So they're parasitic. They take our blood life source energy out of the communities. It goes siphoned out, goes into big corporations, which then they're the ones who then control all governments, right? So my point here is, like, there isn't actually anyone to really blame, right, in this country. You can't point your finger at one or two individuals, right? This is the crux of the whole thing. It's got to do with collective consciousness. It's got to do with circles of consciousness, right? The Gardai have their own circle of consciousness, and what they do is they protect the integrity of their organisation. The judiciary swear an oath to the bar first, before their clients. They're protecting the integrity of their organisation, their spirituality, because that is a spirituality. Right? If you actually look at what's going on there, right, it all goes back to Babylonian worship, right?
That's right.
It's demon worship, as far from what I can see, right? And it's got to do tied in possibly with this Moloch and all these harvest gods and that sort of crack. It seems to be linked in with that. The more you go back and look at it, that seems to be what's going on. And it's right in front of your face. When you're an apprentice barrister, you're a devil, right? It's called deviling, right? And you've got a devil master, right, who you bloody well have to worship, right?
Yeah.
So why would you call, something that you do deviling unless there was a nasty intent towards it? And so it's like a religion, right? And then a lot of these people are tied into Freemasonry as well. If you look at what's going on in Gorey, right, they built a new civic centre in Gorey, and right beside the civic centre is a Freemasons lodge. Everything else was levelled there, but they kept this old Freemasons building right beside the civic centre courthouse.
Oh yes, look, I mean, they're all part of the Funny Handshake Club. That's part of it. I mean, I was when I was living in the UK, I was asked to join, and I just got an uneasy feeling when I was in, amongst the in the lodge and meeting the guys, and something just told me, you don't want to be in here, and I left, and that was it. I never went back. And I just didn't, I wasn't happy with the feeling. But listen, I'm just keeping an eye on time. We have a couple of questions. I know you want to talk about what you're doing now business-wise, but I do want you to just say what you said you write on your tickets if you get a ticket. And this is your experience.
Well, see, I'm not going to take responsibility for people going out and doing this. This is just what I personally do. If I get a summons to court for any fixed penalty notices, I just write across it, no contract, all rights reserved by, James O'Sullivan. Okay?
Yeah.
And I cross it with 2 lines.
Yeah.
So, to break it down, why do I do that? No contract. Everything in a commercial court is a contract. Absolutely everything. It's a law based on property. Their system is based on property. The whole system is based on property, okay? And once you understand that, it's UCC, Universal Commercial Code. It's a commercial court system that goes back to Phoenician times, even going back further than that. It's going back thousands and thousands of years. And the idea behind our court system is the protection of property. And who owns most of the property? The elite. The state is part of the elite. They control most of the property. So that's what that's all about. No contract. Basically saying, I am not contractually obliged in any way, shape or form to engage in this current instrument, which has been created. But the problem is, once it's been created, that it has to be dealt with in some way. So you need to be able to say, look, I'm not dealing with this, right? So it's going to go through the court system anyway. So I reserve all my rights, so I say all rights reserved. So it's no contract, all rights reserved, and only men can reserve their rights, okay? Because citizens have duties and privileges. Because you're an employee of the corporation if you're a citizen. That's what a citizen means. Just an employee of the corporation. Okay? You don't have a right as a citizen, you have duties and obligations. So when I say I reserve all rights, I'm reserving all my rights as a man. And men have rights to property.
Well, here's my question regarding that, the citizen. Because I asked one of the politicians, he said, because I said, when did I agree to the laws of the state? And he said, as a citizen of the state. And I said, but when did I become a citizen? When did I agree to it? And that's I know we're pushed for time. That's another argument. We'll probably have to do a part 2. But I want to know when I became a citizen, because he couldn't tell me. And I said, well, I'm either, a free man or I'm a slave. So if I'm a free man, I'm not consenting. And if I'm a slave, then obviously we're in a fascist state. And slavery is, servitude is illegal according to EU law. So this is my argument.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I just want to clarify here, there is actually no such thing as a free man anyway, right? A free man does not exist. What you have is people that cohabitate in a particular land. And within that, then there has to be some sort of social and civic norms for people to live together without killing each other or stealing each other's property. Right?
So
we had our own system that was there for thousands of years called the Brehon law, the law of affiliate, right? And that was a system based on people. So people and the benefits of people came first, not just property, right? So the people the men and women who controlled the land here were the caretakers of the land, right? And they actually controlled small sections of land, okay? And you had your little kingdoms all over Ireland for thousands of years, and the responsibility there was the land got passed as a caretaker from one part of the family to another part of the family, or outside the part of the family into the greater tribe, the Tuatha, right? And I think that principles of the Brehon law is what we need to get back to. It's reversing, it's flipping it on its head. Instead of putting materialism at the center of law, you put people at the center of law. Of course, property is important too. We need to have property to survive and to be able to live and eat and protect ourselves and shelter, right? Get around and stuff. But people should come first, property second. And that's what the Brehon law was all about.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we have to go back to that. Now, what I'm going to do is, I want to spend a few minutes about you talking about what you're doing now. But before we do that, we're going to quick fire 2 questions over to you, if you can answer them pretty quickly. Steve?
Yeah, James, a couple of questions have come in. A lot of interest in what you're talking about there, as we knew there would be. But Agent was just wondering, how can you claim common law jurisdiction in a Crown-owned court?
You don't claim common law jurisdiction. You automatically have common law jurisdiction. So it's like you don't make claims to anything. You just have it. It's just naturally there. Every man and woman that walks around is already in common law jurisdiction. What happens when you walk into a court is you walk into administrative courts. That's actually in a 2D reality. It's all on paper. So the last time I was in court, there was 11 charges against me for that time they followed me home and took my car off me. right?
Yeah.
11 charges, and if I hadn't dealt with those charges correctly, I would have ended up with prison time for that, right? So I walked in there and I said the same thing again. I said, he asked me, are you James O'Sullivan? I said, I'm here about that matter. And I said, I am the sole authorized administrator of that name. I reserve all rights, and I perfect the reserving of those rights. And once I did that, then I completely controlled the court. And not only did I say that, I said I've brought my court here with me today. This is and what I meant was my body is my court. I bring it here with me, and my consciousness is my court. And my intent, it's about your intent as well, in your body language. This is all your courts. This is what people are missing. They're walking in with all this stuff in their head. They start shouting at judges. Guess what? You don't shout at a judge. What happens when you do that? You've just given him the court. How have you given him the court? Because everyone else in the room looks to you as being someone who's actually trying to create a resistance. And when you create resistance in the court, you've just lost. You don't create resistance in the court. You create a flow of energy in the court that is directly responsible for you making the court. You make it by your behavior, your intent, and your body language, and how you respectfully engage with somebody else. That judge, he struck out 9 of the 11 charges, and the only reason why he only struck out 9 is because I actually pleaded guilty to the other 2. I said, yes, I had no attacks, and yes, I had no NCT. But I said, but sure, it's only the person on the piece of paper is guilty of that. So the man is innocent of all charges, I said. But I gave him a get-out clause because the Gardai was snickering over in the box. They thought I was an idiot. Because they didn't understand the game. It's only a game. The judge knew the game, I knew the game, and me and the judge were playing the game. I didn't make the judge out. I didn't attack the judge and try to make him out to be, try and pull him below me. And anytime you try and pull anyone below you, guess what's going to happen? It's going to rebound back up and smack you in the face. And that's what happens every single time when someone walks into a court in this country and starts pointing the finger at a judge or using authority or power. You're coming from the wrong place. You go in and you speak respectfully to the judge.
Yeah, well, Bill Thornton said that. He did say the same thing. At the end of the day, you have to have respect. Well, you have another question there, because I'm just watching time there.
Speeding, is that a civil or a criminal offence?
Well, it's an offence under the statute law of the state. Simple as that. If you haven't hurt anybody, it's not a crime.
No.
Right.
It's a statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you spoke of that website where you can put in the number on your passport, your birth cert, I just looked it up very, very quickly, and the one that came up, I don't know if it's correct. Maybe you may know. This one is called treasurydirect.gov.
That's it. Yeah, you put in your QSIP number or your driver's license number in there, and you'll be able to find your bond there, and that is all the proof that you need that we are still vassals of the state.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to see how much I'm worth.
Okay, right. Yeah. Right, James, we have about 5 minutes left. So, we did meet you on the Pain Genie seminar, and I know you're doing Pain Genie stuff. Tell us just give us a quick 5 minutes of what you're doing with the Pain Genie and any other stuff you're doing down there.
Yeah, I have a very diverse background in all sorts of different types of work. I worked in management, retail management. I worked in high-level sales and marketing. I worked in call centres. I worked as a computer programmer. So when I came across the Pain Genie 2 years ago and I was living in Auckram, County Wicklow, I realised back then that I had a possibility of building a whole business around this technology, because it sorted out my problem with the outside of my left foot within 30 seconds, and it's never come back, and I had the pain for 2 years. So I realised I'd come across something very, very special here. I went into the study and looked at the science behind it, what was going on. It's an amalgamation of West meets East in science and medicine, where you're bringing in the energy points of the body, the chakra energy, vortexes of energy, in with the mainstream science as well, and software programming and engineering. So the combination of the two have created the Pain Genie. And it was €600. I didn't have the money 2 years ago. But I got the money in the last year, and I actually have 2 now. And I'm flying it. I set up a business here in Chamor, on the Back to Work scheme. So there is a lot of good things about the state too. I'm not totally anti-state. The Back to Work scheme is a really good scheme, and anyone out there, that's stuck on the dole, get on it. Get a business idea going and get on it. The money's there for you. On the Back to Work scheme, I'm on it now since October. I'm officially on it since March this year. I started tickling with the business last October, and it's absolutely flying it. I've had up to 25 clients come to me in 1 week, and I've been using Facebook to advertise. I call the business Natural Healing Tumor because there's no chemicals involved. And this is the future of medicine from what I can see. I have nurses coming to me. I've had 3 nurses coming to me in the last 3 weeks from the local hospital here. I've treated 2 vets so far, okay? I'm not only using the pain genie, I'm also using essential oils, and I do hands-on healing too. And I have a good understanding of the science behind hands-on healing. If you look at Kirlian photography, it shows the physical aura and how the aura itself can be out of balance. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. We only get to see a very small spectrum of light, very, very small snippet of light. But, you know, there's so much you can do with energy medicine. It's the highest form, if you look from the point of view of the subtle energy field, the subtle energy body. Okay? You've got 4 bodies, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. They're all connected with each other. Okay? They all live in the same space. Your emotions are stored outside your body according to energy medicine. So the pain gene doesn't actually work a lot of the time with emotional issues. So I always ask people, you know, if you've got pain, you know, to move around your body, which it seems to with emotional energy a lot, and moves around the body, is when you treat someone with a pain gene, it doesn't go away a lot of the time. It's emotional energy that's built up over time. Then I ask them, have you suffered any trauma experiences, any, you know, have you been through any abuse, physical, mental, spiritual, sexual abuse at all in the past? You know, and you step back from the present, and you go back into their past, and you find out what's going on with them. So I don't just treat people with the physical symptoms. I look for the emotional and the mental and the spiritual symptoms too. It could be one or a combination of them all. But this, as far as I'm concerned, this is the future of medicine. It's the Western world is chronically ill. It's, you know, not only is the Western world physically ill, but most people are suffering from a form of psychosis. Half the world is depressed in the Western world, official figures. So, you know, it's an endemic problem we got here. And energy medicine is a really, really good way of getting to the source of problems rather than waiting until someone gets ill and stepping back. In Japan, they have a completely different system over there. You pay your doctor when you're well. When you get sick, you stop paying your health insurance in Japan. That's the way they do it. They have the right philosophy over there. We have the opposite philosophy. People work until they drop, and then you're too sick. You get the treatment, it's too late, then they pump you full of chemicals. I watched my own sister die, 36 years of age, being pumped up to her eyeballs with all sorts of chemicals, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and then they killed her. They actually stopped her heart by pumping her full of opiates, which eventually killed her. She didn't die of cancer. She died from opiates.
Yeah, see, okay. the medical profession are accountable for so many deaths, but yet they still carry on. James, we're going to have to finish you there because we have another guest to get on. But listen, thanks a lot for coming on. I think we're going to have to do a part 2 and catch up with you on how the court cases are going and what's going on. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get your website address and stuff like that so people can kind of know where to get you, know where to find you. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Alan.
Great information, James. A lot of interest on the chat rooms as well. I did notice that your website is offline at the moment. Is that going to be coming online anytime soon?
That'll be live next week. I only just finished paying for it. So that it's a really good website. It's I could back up everything I do with science is all backed up. Western science, Eastern science, it's all there for people to read, and if any questions they can always email me. The Facebook page has been active now for a number of months. Natural Healing Tumor, put it into Facebook. If you've got any problems with migraines, IBS, sciatica, I've successfully treated someone with fibromyalgia recently. And there's a list of stuff. There's a list of stuff. Back pain, elbow pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, whatever is going on. You know, the pain genie and also the hands-on healing. Combination of both, very powerful.
Brilliant.
And again, that website, it's naturalhealing.com is the website, so make a note of that, people.
Naturalhealingtumor.com.
Naturalhealingtumor.com, so make a note.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll have to do a part 2, James. But listen, thanks a lot for coming on. Just stay with us there for a minute. We'll just go to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Right, we're back, and that was I Don't Wanna Dance by Eddie Grant, good old 80s number. Right, our next guest is Aingeal and Ahonu, who we also met on the Pain Genie training course, and they specialise in reading the Akashic records. So, and they've been very busy. They've been travelling not only back from Ireland to the States, but they've been travelling around the States as well. So they're very tired. So it's a privilege to have them on because I'm sure they're really direct, but we want to find out more about Akashic Records and what they are all about, and obviously how they're getting on with the Pain Genie as well. Just a coincidence that we met them on the course. Good evening, Aingeal and Ahonu. How are you doing?
Good evening. How are you both?
Not too bad, not too bad. Good that you made it back from Ireland anyway, and I take it you enjoyed the training anyway.
Oh, we love the training. It was fantastic.
Yeah, we actually had the Pain Genie for a couple of years prior to that course, but we didn't know how it worked. We were really just fooling around with it, and we had no idea of its potential. So it was it was an eye-opener weekend for us.
Excellent. Yeah, I thought it was the course. I mean, myself and Steve we both enjoyed it, didn't we, Steve?
We did. We learned so. We learned so much, and as you say, we met some great people.
Yeah.
Some fantastic. Yourselves as well. Based on hooking up with you guys, you gave us your website details. I've checked out your website. I subscribe. I now get your free podcast every Sunday.
Yeah, excellent. And of course, obviously, like yourself and James, which we just had James on. Before we got yourselves on, James was on the Pain Genie course as well that day as well, and we just had James on the show, and obviously Cam, and we had Cam from south of France. We met Cam and we found out about the Shungite, and we did the test with that as well. So it was a great training course. But we got the two of you on because we're very interested in what you do, and you deal with the Akashic Records. So for people who don't know what they are and what you do, give us a background of what you do and what they are.
All right, well, I'll start with myself first. Basically, I just was into metaphysics when I was around 20. I had a tragedy in my life which made me ask a lot of spiritual questions. Worked my way up through a lot of different books and courses in healing technologies like many people do. But I was a meditator, and when I was in my meditations, I'd spontaneously find myself in my own Akashic Records, and it seemed to be guided by my higher teachers because they picked specific lifetimes they wanted me to take a look at. That was either for some sort of reconciliation or forgiveness, or maybe to point out a gift that I had developed that they wanted me to use again this life. So, but I couldn't get in consciously on my own, so I took a course to learn actually how to access the records. And when I did so, because I was a tarot teacher for 35 years, and I found that the quality of information in the Akashic Records was so much more sacred and whole. So I started giving people readings through the records instead of through the tarot. And then based on the questions people were asking, because they weren't just asking about their personal lives and their soul purpose, for example. They wanted to know bigger questions about the world, and this was prior to 2012, by the way. They were concerned about finances and what would happen in 2012, and then that went into healing questions. So Ahonu and I started group sessions in Ireland in 2010, where people could just come and ask questions that were of a higher nature. And when we would open the records, we found that we felt Source was talking to us directly and answering those questions, which turned out to be quite profound information on a wide variety of topics. So that's my story in a nutshell.
What are the records? Tell us what Akashic Records are for people who don't know.
Yeah, they're really a living memory bank. I mean, the Akashic Records is really a mechanism in spirit that records everything that happens in creation. And it isn't, some people believe that it is only about a person's soul journey and reincarnational history, but the truth is the records hold the history of everything since creation on multidimensional levels, and it does include our own personal soul journeys from the time we were created as a spark of light down through all our planetary history and the different places that we've lived and experienced. So it's a complete record, and it's a living record. And what I mean by that is that it has full meaning, purpose, emotion, intention, visuals. It incorporates all of the senses when you tap in. So and it seems to be whole. And when I say to you that it has a purpose, the purpose seems to be the evolution of life and the evolution of our personal soul journey, but also the evolution of planetary systems and life itself.
Okay, and can you tell the future with the Akashic Records?
You can see potential timelines, and I'm being really careful with that because Source does not like predictions.
Yes.
And the reason it doesn't is because anything changes from moment to moment, as you well know, based on life itself and the consciousness of people. So you can see a potential timeline where something is headed based on today. But, as we're told, there's billions of timelines.
Yeah.
And like train tracks, you can switch over in a second, depending on what goes on with the consciousness of the people.
Yeah, it's our free will. Every choice we make in life changes the actual timelines we're on. So it's very hard to predict the future. When people say, I'm going to go to a fortune teller, well, the fortune teller might turn around and say, next week you're going to buy a blue car, but you might end up buying a red car because your free will might change during the week. Or you might change your free will and choose not to buy a car. And this is why, from a spiritual point of view, mediums are not fortune tellers because of the timeline system, because people would only be giving out and saying, oh, you said this was going to happen and it didn't. Well, there's multiple timelines, and by changing your free will, you could change the timeline.
Yes, but there's also something very, very important to remember here, Alan, and that is that when a large number of people believe the same thing will happen, then it adds a creative energy to that. Now, we've seen this act itself out with a lot of the blockbuster movies, about the end times and wars and World War III and all this kind of thing. Because if you have people who are making predictions about a negative end, and then people go into fear about it, we actually create from that fear place in the solar plexus negatively.
Yeah,
now,
of course, yeah.
Obviously, we also create very positively. So there is a danger in predicting negative outcomes because we actually will manufacture that outcome.
Yeah, I was going to say that to you because we hear an awful lot of talk now regarding September, and they say the Shemitah and all this. And myself and Steve now, after 5 years of running the radio show, we just see everything as information. We don't see it as negative or positive. We just, here's more information because, throughout the years, I think, Steve, we can both say, can't we, that dates have come and gone and nothing has happened. So we just take everything with a pinch of salt and see it as information. And that's what we say to our listeners. Just take everything with a pinch of salt. There's no harm having a few bits in should anything happen. You never know. But at the same time, never be in fear with it. Just see it as for information. But I do agree with you. I think if people are focusing on this and they're in fear, then there's a probability that it might happen. Steve?
Yeah, well, I just want to say very quickly that I listened to the most recent podcast from Ahonu and Aingeal Rose today, and some of the information that was there was quite interesting. We often speak about archons.
Yeah.
And some of the information that was given today was that the archons, they don't exist like you and I. They're not kind of real in a sense, but they can be they kind of, how would you say, they exist by our negative thoughts. So if we're living in negativity and fear, then we are creating these archons, if I understood the podcast correctly.
Yes, correct, yes.
I thought
now, we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun creating that particular podcast because it arose out of this whole September prediction thing. That's what originated it, because we had several people contact us, and one gentleman in particular who was very scared about what was going to happen in terms of, yes, ascension is a beautiful thought and all of that, but what happens if the moment of death and this tunnel of light thing is all a trick by the archons, So he was actually going into fear about that possible outcome, that, most of us are tricked. This is what his fear was, that most of us are tricked into coming back again out of fear and guilt, and to relive karmic issues that we have been guilty of in the past, So that was a very, very enlightening revelation that we got from the Akashic Records that showed that that's actually the whole issue of karma and reincarnation is an archon deception in the first place. Because if you think about it, if you die and you go into that place of God's source, and you can use whatever name you want on it, I'm not being religious here, so let's just be very open. If you go into that place of pure love, why would it be necessary to come back into agony and pain and suffering?
Okay, so...
It just wouldn't.
Well, being devil's advocate here, they normally say because we're on the journey, we're on life lessons, and each life that we reincarnate into, we're learning to eventually go back to source. So this is what we're told.
Right, and this is the thing though, because we have to talk about the big picture, where absolute truth is, and then the other picture where we haven't got it yet. Okay, so what we're saying is that in the big picture, there's only God's love, and it is true that we're all trying to remember that. So you may come in through many lifetimes and go through many experiences until you get to the place where you realize that there's only one choice. And that choice is eventually that all you're going to want is God's love.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to know God's love. So all the other stuff in between, all the quote-unquote lessons, all of the judgments, all of this and that disappear when you get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what we were saying with the archons is that they can use this idea that it takes a long time or it takes a big journey to get to that place. And that's the part that's not really factual, okay? But it's only factual in a person's mind because of what they believe. So we all know that we've got programming from hundreds of years, all kinds of programming from religions, from parents, from authority figures of all types, okay?
Yeah.
So inevitably we do have to undo all of those in our consciousness before we arrive at the ultimate fact. And the ultimate fact is that we're always loved. That's all that's ever really happening with Source. It's just love and more love. And even the most horrid person in the world is going to be offered the same love from Source as anyone else. So once you get to that place where you start to understand that that's all that's going on, your karma, quote unquote, collapses because you're no longer interested in harming or judging anyone.
Yeah,
and that's when it all disappears. Yeah.
That makes sense because we are in a universe of duality, and obviously if you've got your positive and negative, your yin and yang and everything else, but we have to aim for a universe of singularity, which is pure love. And as you say, when you get to the point and realize that it's love, I mean, we always say, we've said before on the show, you got two emotions, love and fear. Which one do you want? So if you go for the love and realize it is all about love, then that's it. I mean, that makes sense to me. Now, from a karmic point of view, I'm putting my scientific head on here. If you put out, I mean, we're all energy, right? So as people are learning in life, because not everybody is at the stage where they understand about love. So there's people out there who are murderers and killers and rapists and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you look at energy in itself, well, surely I call it the energy boomerang. And if you put out positive energy, well, that boomerang comes in with positive energy coming back, like the law of the universe. And if you put out negative energy, well, that will come back as well because, like attracts like. So, and that's just my kind of scientific approach to it. But we had a guest on who was an expert in natural law, Ralph Ring, who's a scientist. He was developing anti-gravity crafts in the 1950s. And Ralph said that natural law is always easy. Anything that's forced is unnatural. And I asked him about karma. He goes, well, karma is a universal law because it's got to do with energy. And it's only, again, like attracts like. You throw out negative energy, well, guess what? It's going to come back to you. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, let me give you my own personal experience of that. And, I do have to get personal with this in order to illustrate the point. When you asked Aingeal Rose to introduce herself, one of the first things she actually said was that she came to the Akashic records through personal tragedy. Her first husband was shot and her second husband was also killed in tragic circumstances. And in my case, my first baby died when he was 4 months old, and it was on my birthday. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because that's what started me on my spiritual path, questioning all this, questioning what's going on. And unfortunately, it is the case in this reality, and I'll put that in inverted commas, in this reality, that a lot of us will only learn through tragedy. Now, when you talk about karma, you see, one of my main questions at that point in time, all those years ago, was, why did my little baby die? And where I was, and let me just use the word mistaken. Now, you have to take all of this in context and in the context in which it's meant. Where I was wrong with that was I was assuming that the baby was a baby. In other words, it had no spiritual thrust of its own. It had no intelligence of its own. I was assuming that it was just a physical baby. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, it came to me later to help me heal it through love, and that was that every baby, even though we consider it to be a helpless little being, is in fact on its own soul journey. So if it chooses to reincarnate, that is actually its own business. If it wants to live out karma, it is its own business. Do you know?
Yeah.
Whereas we all make the mistake, I think, of making huge assumptions that, it's our job to take care of these children, these other beings and so on, that they haven't a breeze. We do have to guide them, yes. But in the bigger picture, and we constantly have to go up a level to really understand what's going on in the bigger picture. And this is where the whole issue of karma can actually lock us into a way of being in a reality that is finite rather than infinite.
Well, that's
Yeah,
go ahead.
I wanted to respond. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. If you want to respond to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to give my own little thing when you were talking about energy and the balance of energy and the equilibrium factor in karma. Because I have had experiences, and I do believe the law of forgiveness and grace is higher than the law of karma, and I believe that it collapses karma. In other words, there isn't this necessity, once you bring in forgiveness and grace, to go through an experience until an energy is balanced. Because it balances in the quantum moment if you bring in forgiveness and grace. And I actually experienced it myself very briefly, having an argument with somebody one time where I was, furious, and it was the whole, who's right and who's wrong type of scenario. And I left the house storming mad, and suddenly I was told by my higher self that I was making it all up, that I wanted this person to be guilty. And I was really enraged at that answer, but I thought about it because it told me I could also choose peace about the whole thing instead. So after about half an hour, I did. And when I did, because karmically you could say that if I'm angry and I'm lashing out at somebody and I'm spewing, nasty names, I'm sending out this negative energy, and according to the law of karma, that may come back to me at some point. But what happened instead, by me choosing peace, is that my mind could not remember the argument. It was erased from my consciousness. And it happened in that kind of a quantum moment. In fact, I went home because I was in a total state of peace, and the person wanted to now discuss the problem, and I couldn't remember it. There was nothing to discuss because it had completely gone from my consciousness. And to me, that's an example of how karma can be collapsed in the moment once you choose to put yourself in a state of peace where you're no longer wanting somebody to be guilty or innocent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And you just mentioned, we touched base on the archons and the kind of light at the end of the tunnel. And there is a belief that could be just an archonic system, and that we're churned out again. What's your take on it? Do you believe that's archonic, or what do you think?
Well, let me give you an idea of where this whole thing is coming from, because in the beginning you did ask about, what are the Akashic records and so on. And since we've been working in the Akashic field, we've gone through, we've done thousands of hours of sessions. We've done thousands of profound statements from the Akashic records. We've done examples of sessions are like twin flames and soulmates, kundalini, what are the chakras, what about these gifted children, the indigo children, fairies, healing, our light bodies, creation, the future, inner earth, conception, all kinds of stuff, okay? Oh, and then we actually did an amazing session on the planes of existence after death. Now, why am I bringing this one up in particular? Because in relation to the question that you asked about the tunnel of light, we found in the Akashic records that there are multiple, in fact, infinite planes of existence after death. Now, that came as quite a shock to us, and it came as quite a shock to a lot of people, because many people would make, again, huge assumptions that, there is only one plane of existence. It's here, and then the other plane of existence is death or whatever else is beyond that. But it turns out that we make up every single one of those planes of existence after death. And this is one of the reasons, and I remember you mentioning it on a previous radio show you did, I can't remember who your guest was, but where you talked about somebody who dies, like if they're Catholic or Christian, for example, they would see Jesus, but correspondingly, if somebody was Muslim or Jew or whatever, they might see Jehovah or Muhammad or whoever. Yeah. So their belief system is determining what's happening after death. So then to come on to the tunnel of light, we also construct that, and this comes full circle. So if you're living in fear, for example, or you die in tragic circumstances, or you have this guilt of this original sin that we're told we have, and you die with that guilt in you, then it's easy for you to be convinced by whoever or whatever that you must purge that, you must come back. You can't go into the presence of God's source or love because you're guilty of something. And in truth, we've created it out of the guilt. We've carried it forward into another dimensional space with us. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no, I can understand that because a lot of people, from a spiritual point of view, as I'm a spiritual person, and we have people like Mark Impey, who's a medium, and Mark's a personal friend of mine as well, and I've been involved with the spiritual side a long time, and we talk about moving over into the light and meeting relatives and all that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know whether on the planes of existence, I mean, normally, when you look at the likes of the paranormal and stuff like that, people think that, some people who are probably not aware of the spiritual side, they think when you die, you go up to heaven, you're on a cloud and you play a harp. But people who know about the paranormal and the negative side know that when you die, you take your personality with you. And if you're a negative person down here and you die, well, chances are you're going to be a negative person there. And there's a lot of spirits which are earthbound because they don't want to go to the light because of the repercussions. And, they feel they're going to be judged. Now, and, all you have to do is look at all the paranormal stuff that's gone on. I mean, I've been involved in it firsthand as well. And there are negative spirits out there. And, so I can kind of vouch for that from what I've seen. But on the other hand, do you think that if people do go over to the plane on the other side and do move on, do you feel that they go to a plane that vibrates on the frequency that they're on? Like, like if it's somebody who's a real kind of service to others, really helpful, good energy, positive energy, they'll go on a plane with similar souls and spirits, where somebody who's a mass murderer and just doesn't give a damn and negative and all that, well, they'll go on a plane that actually has the same kind of people, same kind of spirits.
I do agree with that for about 80% of the time, because I do know that some people who come here and play out a role of being a negative being are doing just that. And when they die, they fulfilled their contract, they become an adversary for whatever reason, and then they go back to their galactic family or whatever and continue. In fact, very often you'll see people who are enemies on this plane, when they go over to the other side, they'll say, hey, I did a great job, didn't I? Did you see how I screwed up your life in that way? So
you're talking about soul groups where you, before you come down here, and the contract you decided to take on, somebody in your soul group has decided to be the bad person in your life, right, for you to learn that lesson.
Right, because, to me, that's what the benefit of being in the records is. When you go look at a lot of these people that play negative roles, some of them are definitely evil beings, and that's just no two ways about it. And you see that when you cross over, and those beings, like for Hitler, for example, we asked about Hitler one night, only because we had a girl, she came with a list of questions. She wanted to know about all these famous people who had died and where they all were. But what was interesting is when we tuned into Hitler, he was actually confined to this plane of existence that, it reminded me of the rings of Saturn. If you could imagine Hitler, floating around on one of the rings of Saturn, where he wasn't allowed he wasn't really allowed to incarnate or participate in anything. There's a particular period of time where he is quote unquote banned to influence.
Or quarantined.
He can observe, he can see what's going on, but he can't participate. And he certainly can't participate in the affairs of the world until this cycle is over. And that was interesting because they were explaining that people who end up being public figures have actually been building up an auric presence for many lifetimes before they're public.
Yeah.
So even if he came back in and he decided he wasn't going to be a bad guy, chances are he'd still be somebody in authority because of the influence that he's carried with him. Okay, so that was an extreme case. When I looked at somebody and saw that this person as a soul was not allowed to influence Earth in any way, shape, or form until this cycle was over.
So where does that fit regarding we're going to have to go kind of universally, and you're going to have to talk about the ETs, because we're going to be talking about archons and the negative influence and all that negativity and maybe the jinn. How does all that tie into where we are? And then if we do go, if we do die and go down the tunnel and we see the white light, is that being manipulated and controlled? Or is that just, again, if a person believes that they'll be persecuted, as you say, if they die and they're going to see Jesus Christ because their religion and they have a certain belief system before they die, when they pass over, they'll carry that belief system with them and they'll create the reality based on their belief system that they had down here. Is that kind of roughly what you're saying, or is there a bit more to it than that?
Yeah, there's more to it than that, although there is levels where people just pass on. For example, my great-grandparents, they lived together in this White House with a picket fence when they were on Earth, and after they both died, they both came to me, and they had recreated the same little house, and they were still living there. My grandfather always wanted to run a boat marina, and on the other side, he's running a boat marina. Then there's people who are, they're in healing planes, and there's just so many different ones that we create with our consciousness. There's vast libraries of learning. There's all sorts. Okay, now, to answer your question about the tunnel of light, based on what we got the other day from the records, Source was saying that that's a biological process of the interior of cells collapsing inward when someone's at the point of death, that it creates this vortex. Okay, and that vortex is what is the tunnel of light that they experience. Okay, so I don't think it's created by the archons, and I didn't feel it was created by Source. I felt like it's part of our biology as vortex beings, first of all, okay?
Okay.
So what happens to somebody after they leave, a lot of it does depend on their consciousness, and what was also pointed out in the records is that there is a certain amount of hijacking of a soul that can occur. Now, that goes on whether you're living or dead,
Yeah.
People who are vulnerable, people who are weak, oftentimes get attacked and possessed by energies that want to feed off them, and it's no different after you die.
Yeah.
If you are a negative person and you're weak in some way in your spirit, you can be, waylaid a bit. You can be stolen. Souls are stolen, chakras are stolen. All sorts of stuff like that does happen. Okay, so we're pretty advocate too about, drug use and all that sort of stuff. And sometimes people can't help it either, because my sister passed away and she was in a drug-induced state of anesthesia on a respirator before she passed. And after she passed, she didn't know whether she was waking up from the anesthesia or what. And I actually had to go in and help her and tell her what had happened. And it took 3 days before we felt she was free. And it was because she was sticky from the anesthesia. So people have to, there's a lot of things to consider. And it's the reason why prayers are actually so important when somebody does cross.
We did a wonderful session one time, Alan, about prayer. And it was called Prayer and Divine Intercession. And we didn't realize before the power of prayer. Now, I'm not talking about the religious type of prayer that we all grew up with. We're talking about a sincere intention for somebody to have spiritual trust, to be able to get them past any difficulty or any possible hijacking, and to get to that place of love, And in fact, this is something that the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead too, where the prayers and even the whole waking process, the wake that was traditional to people in Ireland and in various other cultures all around the world, was to actually provide that spiritual trust, to get them through that vulnerable point and into that tunnel of light and into that love space, so that they wouldn't be hijacked or interfered with in any way along the way. Now, there's something I want to mention, though, real quickly about all of this. And it sounds like, we know, lots of stuff about the Akashic Records and what's going on. And we do because we've focused our attention on it. But the truth is that everybody has access to the Akashic Records. Absolutely everybody. There's nobody barred from accessing the knowledge that's available in this reality. And one of the things that we have planned for the relatively near future is actually to turn one of our workshops in how to read the Akashic Records into a home study course that people can actually do online and learn at their own pace. We will have that ready in a month or two. But the fact is, though, what I want to open people's minds to is that everybody can actually access any type of knowledge and information that they want about any subject whatsoever. In fact, this is where the great minds get their information. The Teslas and the various inventors and astrophysicists and all sorts. They draw from the cosmic knowledge that's available to them. This is where they get the information, and this is where everybody can get the information too, the same as what we're getting.
Well, that's good to know, because there's a lot of people who are interested in getting that information. We had a chap on, Chris Thomas, and Chris is very popular, and people have asked us to get him back on, but he's not available at the moment to come back on the air. And I'm sure people would love to know how to tune in. So that's something that we'll have to kind of let people know when that course is ready. But we have a few questions. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve has a few questions there just come in.
Yeah, I have a question from Chris. Chris, a long-time listener of the show. And Chris was wondering, do you believe that meddling in the records and giving info to the living can be a disservice by interfering in our life contracts?
No, I actually think the reverse is true. And here's why. Because I don't believe that forgetting, the whole process of forgetting, is natural, first of all. All right? I believe that when you actually do start to wake up and you activate certain parts of your DNA, that one of the results of that is that you do start remembering your own time stream, you start remembering your purpose. All right, so I don't feel it's meddling at all, first of all, and I would never meddle in a person's records anyway without their permission. So it's never really, that's just not a word I resonate with at all. But when you do a reading for somebody and you do look at their contract, it can save a person's life, actually. Because people go around and they're, where the meddling does occur in this reality is that you've got so many things that are compromising a person's natural integrity. And, just a minute ago, Ahonu was mentioning, scientists and people who receive info from the cosmic soup, if you will. But part of the reason they do is because these people are wired a particular way in their brains to be able to do that. And that's another truth that people need to understand is, like, your brain is it's a transmitter and a receiver, actually, and it has unlimited potential to access information, but not if it doesn't have the correct wiring. So what we've got going on today is we've got so many things interfering with our brain wiring. We could have another show about all the interferences that are preventing people from, quote unquote, being the highest that they can be. Mm-hmm. So when you go into and you read a person and you get to look at their contract and you can see their time stream, you'll only see pieces of it that relate to them this lifetime. And it actually is such a help because it allows them to be more genius types beings. It allows them to forgive. It allows them to heal. In cases where they'd be confused for the rest of their life and have no sense of direction, no idea what they're doing, floundering around. So, that's my own take on my experience with reading so many people.
Yeah, and when you say about the wiring of the brain, and the way some people, the likes of the Teslas, etc., who get the information, how important is the pineal gland in this? Because we have heard before that, with the fluoride in the water, it calcifies the pineal gland, and that is supposed to be very important when you are kind of communicating with source.
Well, that does affect it, it's true, but there's so many solutions, okay? In other words, a person can get down on their belly and creep across the floor, on a tile floor, try to remember how the body used to creep, for example. They could create brain highways doing that. They can go from creeping to crawling 30 minutes a day, and you wouldn't believe the difference in the brain wiring just from doing those simple things. And there's a lot of other things around. If anybody were to Google, activating brain centers and stuff like that, that will build brain highways so that they can access. Now, that's only one part of it, but it will put the brain in order, and it will allow you, it's like a domino effect, once your brain becomes ordered, because it has new highways, which can happen at any age, by the way, all of a sudden this intelligence comes in because suddenly the brain is ordered. Now, as far as the pineal, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I was a meditator for many years, and I spent the same time every day going in, and I meditated. My meditations were for knowledge. I would go in and ask my higher self for knowledge. Now, doing things like that also, it's kind of like watering a seed. You can consider the pineal gland a seed in the brain. If it's not watered, it's going to be dormant and not active, just like any muscle or gland. But if you go in with the intention that you're focused and concentrating in that portion of yourself, sooner or later, it's going to start awakening, and then all of a sudden this higher knowledge or mystical knowledge comes in.
And the information in relation to when you say about you can crawl on the floor or different things that you can do in order to get the brain wiring in, the way it's supposed to be, is this information, like, let's say somebody doesn't want to spend hours and hours of, looking up the internet for this information, will this be included in the home study course when that's available?
Yes, it will, yeah. And an important point about that, and it also helps to answer Steve's question there about, the sense of interfering with, the Akashic Records interfering with a life in this dimensional space right now. It ties in with the question that we get asked all the time, how do I develop my psychic abilities? So in a way, Steve's question can be, is developing somebody's psychic abilities interfering with their soul contract? No, not at all. In fact, everybody should be superiorly psychic. It's everybody's divine right to be intuitive, to be very, very tuned in to the natural cycles, to be telepathic, to be able to teleport, to do all these kind of what we knew in the transcendental meditation movement as Sid has, or extraordinary abilities. Everybody has the right to those. And the answer to the question about developing psychic abilities is the same as the one that I gave you about learning to read the Akashic Records. It is all about self-mastery. This is our whole purpose here, and you mentioned it yourself, just using slightly different words, about learning love. It's the same thing. It comes down to self-mastery. Now, if somebody is not willing to go through that process of self-mastery, and that might mean, I'm not going to eat good food today, or I'm not going to exercise today, or I'm not going to be honest with myself in some other way, or I'm not going to be honest with my feelings. I'm not going to open my heart to this issue. You know what I'm saying? Or if I'm going to choose condemnation instead, or in Aingeal Rose's example, I'm going to choose peace now instead of anger and retaliation. The very effort or willingness or intention to work towards self-mastery automatically opens up brain wiring that allows the increase of psychic abilities.
I'm glad
you
said. I'm glad you said effort, Ahonu, because it's all about energy, and I've found with all the kind of studying I've been doing, I mean, the food that we eat, the processed food, takes our energy, and then people don't want to make the effort. So
Yes.
again,
Well, they don't have the energy to make the effort.
yeah, exactly. That's it. And it's a kind of, it's a cylindrical thing. It's going around and, eat bad food, don't have the energy, eat bad. And it goes over and over again. But I'm just watching the time there, but I want to get both of you, I want to get your comments on the current situation with the planet and the world and what's going on and what's being said. I'm sure you both have seen all about the things have been said. I mean, we're talking about, September, October, Super Samhita, the blood red moon, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to approach it at all from a negative point of view. Again, it's just information, but just to go and get your take on it and what you see happening, because we have a guest on every week, and certain guests coming up now are going to be talking about certain things that are going to be planned, are going to be happening, whether it's natural or it's HARP technology is another thing. But what's your take on it based on what you've seen and come across?
Like, I let Ahonu comment first, and only because I'm in the records now, and I just want to double check something.
Yeah. Well, my take on it is it comes from the place of self-mastery. If someone is in a place of mastery, then there's no fear attached to any of this kind of thing. And we all remember the whole 2012 scenario, when people were going into serious fear about what was going to happen and all of that. And then, as you mentioned, countless other dates that people throw out and predictions that people throw out. So one of our ways to approach all of these things is to look at it from a place of love and look at it from a place of a higher viewpoint. Now, that's not to say that we have our head in the sand, not by a long shot. We're very much with our feet on the ground, because in a way you have to live in two worlds when you're here. I know you and your audience will understand what I mean when I say that. You have to live in two worlds. You have to live with your physical feet on the ground, and you drink the fluoridated water, and you inhale the polluted air and the chemtrails, and you eat the genetically modified foods of necessity, because a lot of times you can't avoid that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So there is that practical 3D aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, though, there is the awareness that is only a belief. That is, it's serving a purpose. It's a creation of our own. And that if we feel in ourselves, deep inside ourselves, if we feel that connection to God's source, and if we nourish that and nurture it, then any of the issues that people raise, whether it's another world war, whether it's disease, pestilence, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, whatever it might be that is coming, then you can approach it from a place of total forgiveness and use it actually as a means to more self-mastery. So yes, there is stuff going on. Yes, there's financial manipulation. Yes, countries are, being manipulated. Yes, governments are manipulative. Yes, there are insidious beings out there. Yes, there are archonic types who will hijack your soul essence. Yes, there's all kinds of evil that we perceive in this reality that's going on. But as I said, at the same time, you do have to look to where the other foot is standing in the spirit world, and be very aware that there is an absolute beauty unfolding. There is an absolutely wondrous outcome to all of this, and that is when you're truly honest in your own heart and in your being, and you seek to connect with that essence of God's source love, and that is, it's very motivating and very moving.
Excellent. And Aingeal, what's your take on that?
Yeah, okay. Well, people have asked about the world every single year, actually. In fact, they ask month to month. And, a while ago, a couple of years ago, Source actually gave us a little bit of a lecture, and it was kind of a surprise, because Source usually doesn't do that. But it basically said that an event was coming, and it wouldn't tell me what it was, but it basically said it was because of our mediocrity. That we don't love ourselves, we don't adhere to high standards of love, not for ourselves, not for one another. And since that time, that was probably 3 years ago, since that time, we've seen things shift. In other words, 2012 happened, and there was a doorway open in the cosmos that did send all these beautiful blessings to the earth. Okay, and periodically, and that's what we think is going on in September as well, is that it's an arrangement of cosmic energy that is another influx of light, has the potential to do more activation. But whenever you have more activation, you've also got purification. Because the truth is that as long as we all still want to fall into the game of blame and judgment and victimizer, and as long as we play that game, we're only going to create more of the same. Because what really has to happen is that, as you mentioned earlier on, Alan, you only really have one choice. You're either choosing love or fear. Now, what does it actually mean to choose love? And, it can be sounding very airy-fairy to anybody listening. Oh, that's easy to say while the world's going to hell in a handbasket, But I'll give you a little example of something tangible that we did that makes the point. We're doing this water project, and I won't go into detail because of time, but we decided to do an experiment with some people the other night where we just took a pure glass of water and we opened the lid and we invited Source to put its presence into that jar of water as much as it wanted to, with the idea that when we each drank it, it would give each one of us some message. Okay? Now, we always see with Source will always predict more earth changes. It will always guide us to, be prepared for any sort of weather climatic scenario because it's obvious it's happening and you can't hide your head in the sand about it. So we're always practically told that we have to be willing to be more and more self-sovereign, more and more cooperative with our neighbors, with our community, support one another, grow your own food, get away from the dependence on governments and all sorts. Okay, we're always told that. Okay. Now, when we drank the water, we all had this experience of Source that was actually so joyful, and what a sense of humor, and what a sense of lightness, and it basically gave all of us this feeling like everything is all right, no matter what you all do, everything is all right in the big picture. That yes, cycles come and go, people come and go, people live, people die. It goes on and on and on. And in a way, it was saying, in this particular time period that you're in, you're being asked to give up the judgment. Just stop doing it. Because as long as we think linearly from past, present to future, and we believe in the history, and we believe in a future that's going to be chaotic and it's going to continue this way, this is why nothing's ever changed, because we don't ever get out of the linear perception of past, present, future in our minds and in our beliefs. So we have to choose now. We're being asked to actively, deliberately, moment by moment, watch your consciousness, watch what you're thinking, watch what you're projecting. Choose the high road, because that's the only thing that collapses all of that stuff,
Yeah. Okay,
so,
well, no, that's...
But I could tell you that you can have an experience of Source just by projecting a little bit of it into a glass of water. It sounds silly, but when you drink it, you end up at a level of communication with Source and with the natural world that people do not normally connect to. And I think that's very important as well, because once you start really having an experience that everything's sentient and alive, you respond very, very differently to things.
I think that's an experiment that people should try themselves. I think it's something that I might try myself and give it a go. We've reached that time, unfortunately. I think we're going to have to do a part 2. So a big thank you for coming on, both of you, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu. We met you on the Pain Genie training course, which is great fun. It was great meeting you. So we'll definitely do a part 2. We'll get in touch with you and we'll do a full show, because I think there's a lot to talk about and we can really get into some of these subject matters. We're just kind of scraping the surface tonight and introduce you to our audience and to people worldwide. What I'm going to do is pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details, and so people know where to find you. Steve.
Yeah, it's been great information. I've really enjoyed listening to both of you guys. As I say, I do listen to you on the podcast as well. It's some great information. And again, as Alan said, we did hook up on the Pain Genie thing. That was great as well. Really enjoyed that. But I do actually have the website here, wordofempowerment.com. I have posted that link into the chat room, both on our site here and also on People's Internet Radio. So everyone is getting getting that link anyway. And I know from the link, and if they do sign up to the podcast, they will get a free one once a week. And as what I do, I download the MP3, listen to it in the car going to work. It beats listening to anything that's on the radio. I can assure you that anyway.
That's true.
And you actually learn something as well. So I mean, thanks very very much for that. Is there any words of empowerment that you want to leave us with?
Oh, sure, he hands me the mic.
Well, a woman always has more to say than the man anyway.
Yeah, just that, we really are heading for a paradisical place. And I think if people can hold that and be that in their consciousness, then we'll get there a lot faster.
Brilliant stuff.
Yes,
okay.
And I would also just give one final little word of encouragement too, and that is to be discerning. Learn to be discerning about various energies and various things that people, no more than ourselves, are telling, or anything that anybody is telling you. You can bounce it off your own solar plexus, bounce it off your own heart, bounce it off your own intellect, and you'll very quickly know if something is true or not. And that's very simple and very easy to do, and it's very, very necessary in this great time of change.
Definitely. Okay, guys, listen, stay with us there. Thanks a lot for coming on. We're going to go off to musical break. This song is for everybody who's been involved in the water protest campaign, the Eurostat. Irish Water failed the Eurostat. That was fantastic news. They're basically, as far as I'm concerned anyway, and Steve's concerned, that they're dead in the water. So here's a little song. We'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
That was the short version. We are the champions by Queen. Only because, well, we've won the first battle, we haven't won the war. Or is it we won the war, we haven't won the battle? I don't know. But yeah, when Irish Water is dead in the water, then we'll probably play the full song. In fact, we'll probably be dancing on the ceiling here. There's another song.
That's for when we win it.
Yeah. But come here, great information there with Aingeal, Rose and Ahonu. As Alan said, we hooked up with those guys on the Pain Genie course as well. So many open minds on that course. It was absolutely fantastic. Great information. Worldofempowerment.com is their website. I urge people to go along there if you want to find out some more information. Again, there is a little sign up box there where you can pop in your email and you will get notification once a week. They do offer a free Akashic record reading, and it's for the general public. You'll get the link to that in your email, and if you're interested, you can actually go on when they're doing it. They do it on a Sunday morning, but it's US time, so it could be maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, and you can actually type in questions as well. So that's quite interesting there.
Well, just to find out about your life and maybe past lives, and find out maybe they might have some information as to what your goal is in life. Not so much the actual timeline or what your life is going to turn out to be, but maybe in your past lives you had a skill, and throughout your past lives, maybe you were a teacher in your past life, and that carried on through different lives. Things like that. You never know. I mean, worthwhile finding out anyway. But next week we have Dr. Joseph Cipollone, and I go, bum, 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 we do have the music, because, Dr. Joseph is pretty straight up with the information that he has. I'm not saying it's true, I'm just saying, again, Ahonu said use discernment, you have to use discernment. Quite interesting information that Dr. Joseph has, and we wanted to get him on before the September date, because he did say to us, it'd be good to get on to talk about what's going on and get an update from Dr. Joseph as to what he feels is going on and the things that are happening, what he's seeing going on. So again, we'll have Dr. Joseph on, so that's going to be quite interesting next week. It is what Ahonu said and what Aingeal Rose said. Really try and get as much negativity out of your life, whether that's just negative people or negativity itself. And our path is to move away from ego and ignorance and move towards wisdom and
wisdom and something else. Wisdom and knowledge and servitude to others and
wisdom and it's gone.
Norman Wisdom
catchphrase.
Okay, what's it sound like? Give us a clue.
wisdom, and it'll come back to me. As soon as we finish, it'll come back to me. But you know what? I mean, the main thing is get away from ignorance and get away from ego anyway. Humility, that's it. Wisdom and humility. They're the two things we have to go towards and we have to go find. And love is, I know it's a cliche and it sounds funny, but that's the energy where we have to go to, guys. It really is. Because the world would be a much better place if we had it. So that's where we have to go to. Who's on with Vin tonight? Do you know?
And that's an interesting question. I'm not sure who's on with Vin tonight. I was, no. Sorry. You just can't get the staff.
No, I tell you. P45.
Well, look, just stay tuned anyway, because it's always a good show, Vin.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to be in the old shirt and tie as well, so you can catch him on the on the video.
We will try and find out what happened the OYM stream. It's basically they had a database error on their end. Nothing got to do with us. We couldn't do anything. Their database crashed. Our login. So lucky enough, we had the two of the streams. So thanks to United We Strike and People's Internet Radio for having the stream. As you say, next week it's Dr. Chip alone, and during the week I don't think I have much planned this week. But you never know what happens during the week. Things just emails come in and questions get asked and you know. So we'll just see what happens anyway. We just say to you. If you have any people that are of interest that you want us to get on to interview, let us know. Because we got sent an email by one of our guests, our listeners, who told us about Dr. Simon Atkins, and he's an interesting guy, and he's going to be talking about the superwave. That Planet X isn't a planet; it's a superwave. So it'd be interesting to when we talk to Simon. He has his own video channel and he does his own videos as well. So it'd be good to catch up with him. But for myself, I will say have a good week. Stay safe. Don't know where the bloody sun has gone. But hopefully we get some sunshine during the week.
It's 9 o'clock. It's gone to bed.
It's gone to bed. So for myself, Alan James, take it easy. Thanks for tuning in as usual. And if you have any news, send us an email. Let us know. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, and I'll just wrap it up here now. Again, it's been a good evening of information and great guests as well. And thanks to everyone who joined us on the chat rooms as well, and everyone who had questions. And sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but we were kind of tied for time. But again, Kevin has agreed to come on, and Aingeal Rose, that's Ahonu, they've agreed to come on again and do a part 2. And as has James O'Sullivan. James, who was with us in part 1, he has agreed to come on again at a later date and do a full show as well. So that'll be worth waiting for. That's it. I've nothing planned during the week either. Bank holiday here in the Republic of Ireland tomorrow. So yeah, we'll all be scratching our backsides. Nothing to do because weather forecast says it's going to be rain and wind. Yeah, so yeah, we've that to look forward to. Anyway, stay tuned to People's Internet Radio for Vin, and we'll do it all again in 7 days. Take care. Bye bye.
Open your mind.